When we start talking about the work of the third angel, questions begin to arise in the minds of people. Sunday law, close the probation. Second Advent. As soon as we start placing the third angel, as we discussed this morning in Great Controversy 608, people begin to ask questions. So if this is the arrival of the third angel, which you spoke about this morning here, they once had a profession of the truth, and the truth was the third angel's message, but they didn't obey the third angel, therefore they were not sanctified by it. In this history, they're not set apart for a holy use. So in the context of the Sunday law, the holy use happens when? When does the holy use occur? If your framework was the Sunday law, that was the story. Sorry? When would it happen? Not what it would look like. When would the work happen if they had been sanctified, set apart for the holy use? When would the holy use happen? So my brother says over here, that's when the holy use would be. Anyone else? Sorry? 9/11. So here they're being sanctified. They're being set apart for holy use. And what is the holy use? What's the holy job function? Teach. When? When the framework is the Sunday law story, this one. When do you go to do the work? Second Advent. Way over here. So we're here. So this is clearly not the line of the 144,000. It's right here. This is the work that they're required to do. So in the framework of the Sunday law, in this story, the holy work is the loud cry, isn't it? So this is a preparation. You're going to be set apart to do this work. If we're okay with expressing it that way. So in the framework of Matthew 13, where is the holy work now? Or the holy use? Someone said? Harvest. So depending upon the story, in this story, the holy use is here. In this story, the holy use is a dispensation before. So in Matthew 13, what is the holy use? If we agreed here, the holy use is to teach or to call the people out. If we can conceptualize it that way. What's the holy use in this story when it's here? That's the event that's happening, but what's the holy use? Sorry? Teaching. Harvesting. So, who's doing the holy use? The holy work. Is it? I'll give you a choice of 3. I'll give you a choice of 2. The servants or the reapers? Neither. Who is being set apart for holy work in the story of the wheat and tares? The wheat, not the servants. Servants aren't there being set apart for a holy use. So we've got the dispensation harvest. We've got the symbology, the wheat. So what is the holy use? Sister Emma? They've already produced the fruit. They produced the fruit here. What's the use? The fruit is the wheat. If we're going to say that it's not just the plant itself. What's it all for? Why is it even growing? Sorry? For consumption. To feed people. So the holy use here in the harvest is to feed people. You convert it into bread. So depending upon the story, whether it's Daniel 11 or Matthew 13, you can go to the same history. These 2 dispensations, and you end up coming with completely different scenarios. The holy use is a different dispensation. The separation is in a different dispensation. So there are big differences depending upon the storyline that you're going to be using. Are we okay with that? So, are there any questions on what we've discussed so far? If there were, they should fall into 2 categories. The first one is you'd be asking me for clarification on this. fractal, non-fractal. That you still don't have clarity on that. The other question you would ask is, when you see the implications of all of this, that may challenge your current understanding of what is going to happen in this history. It might challenge it, which means you might think that this is wrong, or you realize that your position is wrong. Then you might ask this question of, how did you get to this wrong conclusion? So there should be two series of questions, if there are any. The first, I still don't understand how this is working. Or I don't understand how this is working. Or I don't understand how sometimes you fractalize and sometimes you don't. The second question that we would have, which may not be a singular question, would be, this looks different to what I expected. The moving of the third angel. Because all the questions would be about the third, not the first or the second. So it'd be challenging your position, your understanding of the work of that angel. So they're the questions that I would expect to have asked if things are not clear. So I don't know if anybody has questions. If not, someone's given me a written question. It's a common question, it's not that unusual. When we began to understand or began to explore the work of the third angel, this may not be a detailed or a comprehensive explanation, but I think it's reasonable, reasonably accurate. So we used to teach, if you go to this story here, the story of the first, second and third angels' messages, that there was a distinction between the first two and the third. That the first angel's message and the second angel's message occurred over a period of time. It's a period. And this was in contrast to the third angel, which was a point, or as Elder Jeff will describe in the past, a litmus test. Litmus test is named after a scientist. You dip specially treated paper into a liquid and it changes colour. Another example he might give is a pregnancy test. And these models that he would give were to illustrate that the third test was a point in time which was different to the first two. There are enough of us in this room for us to be able to testify if that comment on history is accurate or not. So for those of you who are aware, is that an accurate representation? Or accurate enough? Yes? No? Okay, so we'll say yes. Brother William, is that accurate? Or you're not sure? You don't know? Brother Dennis, do you know? Is this an accurate representation that we used to teach? The first and the second were over a period of time, and the third was a point. And it would be described as a litmus or a pregnancy test. It would tell you on the spot, straight away, if something was, whatever the situation was, whether it was this thing or that, right or wrong, saved or lost. It's not an accurate? It is accurate or not? Sorry? I'm not asking what we're currently understanding. I'm saying what we understood years ago. Yes? Okay. So I think this is an accurate representation. Then what began to happen was we began to do studies on what was called the binding off. Binding off would mean the finishing touches. Finishing touches. Or the conclusion. And it's an agricultural term, but it could also be used as a grammatical term. You could just say, let's bind off this discussion. Normally we'd say, let's conclude the discussion. So when we started looking at this, I think this is a fair representation. It may not have been exactly these steps or this logic. In this story, just take it at a generic level. What's this way, Mark? Loud cry. Today I would say the loud cry here, and here what would we call it? So I'm saying this is an approximation, I'm not saying it's definitive. The loud cry for the world, midnight cry for the church. So here we are. This is the midnight cry. And we would put a date to this. August 44. And if that was the cry at midnight, midnight cry, what would precede that? What come before it? Proceed, come before. Midnight. So the Sunday law would be midnight, which would be July 44. So we begin to introduce midnight in relation to the third angel. And then we say, we know this. What's this? What's this piece of the puzzle? First, then, and first the church, then the world. Don't be confused about what's above the line, just the bottom bit. The world ends where? The close of probation. And the church ends where? Close of probation. They're the same. For the world, this is 12:1. And for the church, it's 11:41. Everybody's saying Sunday law. So we bring all of this here, and this now becomes the close of probation, or a shut door. And then what we do, through some numerical manipulation, we go to Daniel chapter 10, and we make this waymark, just call it this waymark, not Sunday law. We call this waymark Daniel chapter 10, the Mare vision, and its association, the Mara vision. We do that based upon what? Proof texting. Because we know that this waymark is what? Another way to express this. What's another way to express close of probation? So if you're going to speak, shout, because I had 3 voices at once. First person, shout, it's your opportunity. No, I'm not looking for a verse. This is a shut door message. So if this is a shut door, this is a shut door. And where do you see a shut door message in the book of Daniel? Chapter 8. There's a shut door message. Daniel 8, 13, 14. So the shut door message takes you to where? October 22nd, 1844. Are we okay with that? I'm trying to trace us through the logic of where we began, litmus test, to where we are now. We start off with this. We recognize that Sunday law is midnight, July, close of probation. And it's also what? It's on the board. It's also a shut door. And where do you see a shut door? Daniel 8:14. We're okay with those steps. Then what we say is this. Verse 13 says what? 8:13 says what? How long is the vision? We've known this for a long time. I think I've known it for more than a decade now. But it becomes an issue about 3 years ago. 2016. 3.5, that kind of time. What becomes an issue around 3.5 years ago? I've given you the clue. Speak louder. No. The question in 13 is what? How long is? Okay. I've said I've known about this for a long time. That's not the clue. We begin to discuss this issue, becomes an issue in our movement around 3+ years ago. What becomes an issue in Daniel 8? I'll give you one more clue, sorry? No. In the English, it's hidden. So it's the study of the visions of Daniel 8. In the English, it's hidden. When you go to the Hebrew, you discover there are 2 visions in Daniel. So verse 13 asks what question? Let's switch to Hebrew. How long is the hazon? And the answer is 2,300 days. This is what he sees. And then what happens? In 13, he hears. The clues begin to come to the surface. Verse 13 becomes a different vision. In fact, it's not even brought to view anywhere. There's no verses that deal with it. The conversation itself is not the vision. Daniel sees something that he doesn't write down. Which is what? Which is the Mare vision. And one word. What is the Mare vision? Okay, we'll go to the Mare vision. We'll go with the Mare vision. One word. Appearance of what or whom? We go to go with Christ. He sees Christ. Where? Not just the end. It's in the sanctuary. He has a vision of Christ in the sanctuary. And not just any time in the sanctuary. On the Day of Atonement. On that night, day experience. So this is not a study on Daniel 8. He sees this, and what is this vision associated with? Nothing that we've just said now. We said a few minutes ago. Sorry? No, we said not that bit. That's this one. That's the 2300s. What's this one associated with? What's this one associated with? It's the shut door message. Because it's which year? October 44. The door that Christ opens and shuts, no one can change. Are we okay with that? So we're going to go from Daniel 8, the Mare vision. A vision of Christ. And he doesn't understand. So when does he begin to understand? When he sees who? When he sees? Not Gabriel. When he sees? Who? When he sees Christ. When does he next see Christ? Chapter 10. He has, or he sees the Mare. He sees the Mare and he has the Mare experience. So chapter 10 becomes the shut door message. The shut door message is here, and it's the third angel's message. So we'll put the third angel here. Take that out. So we've got the third angel's message, which is the shut door message. And how long is the Day of Atonement? A point or a period? Point or a period? So point, not a period. You have 365 periods, and it occurs on one period. One day, one period is the point. Let me rephrase that. You have 365 points, not periods. So Daniel 8:14 becomes a point. You can prove that in Daniel 8. So in Daniel 10, and everything's good, we've got this point. And then what's the new discovery in Daniel 10, where now you've gone from Daniel 8, a point, and now you're in Daniel 10. It's the Mare vision. It's seeing Christ in the most holy place. And what confronts us? What's his experience in Daniel 10? He collapses, he dies. And how's he going to be fixed? 3 touches. As soon as you say 3, You switch from what to what? From a point to a period. So now we're confronted in the movement that this is not a point. And in our ignorance, when we started dealing with point and period, I don't want to criticize, but we did come up with some unusual ideas, like time dilation. Now, I don't think time dilation is a good explanation of what's going on here. There is no message whatsoever that Future for America are now giving that ever speaks of anything as being a point. When we were ignorant on these issues, we were grappling with these things and we tried to reconcile. So we get to a place where it's a period of time. So that's how we've got to the place where we're now dealing with this period of time. So the model changes, and we have the third angel's message. And this is where we began to experience problems. Because what we then did was, we knew where that was. Third angel's message is about the mark of the beast. And we know it's what waymark? Sunday law. So we start placing the third angel's message in a period of time from the Sunday law to the close of probation. We go from 3A to 3E. Now when we're doing all of this, many of the teachers are not actually explaining what they're doing. They just draw things without actually drawing a conclusion or coming to a conclusion. So this modeling can be delivered to the movement and no one questions. Because there's no explanation, there's nothing to question. So let's question. If you were to do this, where would you be marking the end of the third angel's work? Someone says COP. Someone says Second Advent. So what we do as unfaithful Bible students, unfaithful, we go to early writings, page 118. I saw the work of the third angel. Ellen White's told that the work of the angel is awful, it's serious. He's the angel that is to select the wheat from the tares
era ye malayika alina okwawula ebisusunku okuva mu ŋŋaano
and to seal or bind them.
era n'okuteekako akabonero
To seal or bind the wheat for the heavenly Ghana.
okukwata okuteeka akabonero ka katonda ku ŋŋaano okutwalibwa mu ggulu.
And we jump on to this statement,
Kati ne tubuuka ne tugenda ku Ellen White ky'ayogera
and what do we pick up?
kati ne tujjayo ki
Bind.
tugamba kuno kwe kuŋŋaanya.
The third angel binds.
Malayika owookusatu akuŋŋaanya
And we all know where the binding off is.
era tumanyi bulungi okuŋŋaanya kiki ekitegeeza
It's the finishing work or the closing work, isn't it?
gwe mulimu ogukomekkereza.
And if it's the finishing work,
Era bwe kuba nga gwe mulimu ogukomekkereza
and there's only 3 steps to this work,
era nga waliwo engeri 3 ez'omulimu guno
has to be the third angel.
ateekwa okuba malayika waakusatu
So the binding off has to be the third angel.
nti era malayika akuŋŋaanya ye malayika owookusatu.
And here, Ellen White gives a proof text for that.
Era wano Ellen White akwata ennyiriri
Third angel binds.
n'agamba nti malayika owookusatu
Third angel concludes,
nti malayika owookusatu yakola enkomekkerezo
finishes the work.
yamaliriza buli kimu.
And where is the work finished?
Kati omulimu guggweerako wa
Here,
omulimu guggweerawo wakati
in the harvest.
eyo nga tuli mu makungula.
So what we're forced to do
Kati kye twakatibwa okukola
is to take the third angel
kati kwe kukwata malayika owookusatu
and extend it
ne tumwongerayo
to the second advent,
okumutuusa ku kudda kwa Kristo.
and it runs all the way to the end.
Ne tugamba nti aviira ddala okuva
I'll put close.
aviira ddala okuva kusandira okutuuka ku second advent.
And this is where problems begin.
Kati wano obuzibu bwe bujjira.
People are not reading carefully.
Abantu tebasoma bulungi.
Everything seems to fit,
Buli kimu kyonna ne kirabika nga kijjawo bulungi
until we begin to look carefully.
okutuusa bwe tutandika okutunuulira ddala obulungi.
And I want to make an observation now.
Era nina kye njagala okubategeeza kati.
This is one of the most fundamental problems with this movement.
Era kati bwe buzibu bwe tukyasinza okubeera nabwo ng'omugenzi.
Today,
Olunaku lwa leero
what's the argument?
okukaayana kuli kutya.
When we first began to study this issue here,
Bwe twatandika okusoma ku Bafalisaayo n'Abasaddukaayo,
we went to which portion of Scripture?
twagenda wa
Luke 10, 25 into 26.
twagenda ne tusoma Luka essula y'ekumi okuva ku 25 okutuuka ku 26.
The question is, how do we read?
Ekibuuzo nga kiri nti osoma otya.
Worse than that,
Ekisinga obubi ku ekyo
what do we read?
tusoma kiki kye tusoma
And what do we discover that we're reading?
era kiki kye tujja mu ebyo bye tusoma.
What rule are we breaking?
Tumenya tteeka ki.
Rule number 5.
Tumenya etteeka eryokutaano.
And which part of the rule are we breaking?
Kati ku tteeka eryo tumenyawo kitundu ki.
We are following teachers
Tugoberera abasomesa
who are either guessing
abageesinga
or have got their own creed.
abalina ebirowoozo byabwe.
We won't accuse our brethren
Tetugenda
like our brother did. We don't want to do that. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They weren't prideful. So, what we do is we guess.
kye tukola kwe kuteebereza.
And what should we be doing?
Ate nga kiteekeddwa okukola ki?
Following the Bible.
Kugoberera Bayibuli.
Why? Because it's a rule or a law unto itself.
Tuteekeddwa okugoberera Bayibuli kubanga yo tteeka gy'eri.
Practically what that means is
Kye kitegeeza nti
we should go
tuteeka okugenda
from the big line
okuva ku layini ennene
to the smaller.
tugende ku layini entini.
Is that correct?
kituufu
Do we agree with that? So,
kikkirizaamu
obviously, no. We shouldn't agree with that
tetuteekeddwa kukkiriziganya nakyo
because this was a sectarian creed.
kubanga kino zaali ndowooza z'abantu
This is not found in inspiration.
kubanga bino tebiri mu mwoyo wa bunnabbi
And the sooner we admit this,
kati ekyo kasita tukikkiriza
the sooner we can come into unity with one another and with the Spirit.
kati awo tutandikira okukwatagana n'abooluganda wamu n'omwoyo w'obunnabbi
Now, you would think,
kati wandirowoozezza
after thousands of hours of material,
kati oluvannyuma lw'enkumi n'enkumi z'ebintu
a plain exposition on the issues,
okunnyonnyola okutuufu ku nsonga zino
that even if FFA disagreed with us on some issues,
kati nga newankubadde FFA tekwatagana naffe ku nsonga ezimu
they'd agree on some fundamental points.
ebimu ku byo bakkiriziganya nabyo
That this is a sectarian creed
era bakkiriza nti kino kyali ndowooza y'abantu
because it's not found in inspiration.
kubanga tekiri mu mwoyo wa bunnabbi
You can squirm. You can try to slither out of this problem, escape,
kati oyinza okwagala okudduka okuva mu kizibu kino
but you can't turn Life Sketches 411 into 911.
naye toyinza kukwata akatabo ka life sketches 911 n'okakyusa n'okafuusa 911
You can't turn Testimonies to the Church, Volume 9, page 11, into 911.
tosobola kukwata testimonies volume 9 olupapula 11 n'olukyusa n'olufuula 911
You cannot do that,
tosobola kukikola
honestly.
nga tuli bamazima tosobola
And you cannot make 1989 the time of the end,
era tosobola kufuula 1989
honestly.
kiseera kya nkomekerero
Because to do that
kubanga okukikola ekyo
stands in opposition to Luke chapter 10.
kubanga bw'okikola kitegeeza owakanya olunyiriri lwa Luka essula 10 olunyiriri lwa 25
There is no thus saith the Lord for that.
mu ekyo temuli bw'atyo bw'ayogera Mukama
This has to be what? 1798.
kiteekeddwa kuba 1798
This is the line that we have been given.
kubanga yeno gwe guno omusitale gwe tuweebwa
And that's where our journey should always have begun, and it didn't.
era awo ffenna olugendo lwaffe lwatandikidde ate era si bwetutyo bwe lwali
If it had,
singa lwatandikira awo
we would have remained in safety,
twandisigadde tulina emirembe
and we wouldn't have made the mistakes that we had.
era tetwandikola ensobi kati zetukola
Now, I don't say any of that as a criticism.
kati ekyo soogera nga nnenya omuntu yenna
God's ways are mysterious.
kubanga engeri katonda gy'akolamu ebintu tetegeerekeka
And I'm not arguing that he didn't lead us in this direction.
era siri mu kuwakanya nti oba ye yatukulembera olugendo luno lwonna
I think you can develop strong arguments to say that he led us in this way.
era kyemmanyi osobola okuyimirirawo okusobola okuwa obukakafu nti katonda yabadde atukulembera
So, we've come to a place,
tutuuse
because of our preconceived ideas
tutuuse nga olw'okuba tulina ebirowoozo byaffe
of the binding off,
nga tubiina kukuŋŋaanya
Daniel 10,
daniel essula ey'ekumi
the third angel's message,
malayika owookusatu n'obubaka bwe
early writings, page 118,
ale writings olupapula 118
we developed this model.
ne tutandika okuzimba engeri eyo
And of course,
era
this stands in opposition
kino kiwakanya
to a plain, thus saith the Lord.
kiwakanyiza ddala bw'atyo bw'ayogera Mukama
And that is the problem that each of us is confronted with.
era bwe buzibu ffenna bwe tusanga
That we stand in opposition to his word
tuwakanya ekigambo kya Katonda
when we start discussing these issues.
bwe tutandika okugezaako okubaganya ebirowoozo ku nsonga zino
Now, this material has been put out a number of times now.
kati engeri zino ziteereddwayo emirundi egiwerako
If you go to Spiritual Gifts Volume 1,
bw'ogenda mu spiritual gifts volume esooka
I'll give you the reference in early writings.
nga ngenda bawa ekyokulabirako mu ale writings
EW 279.
ogenda mu early writings 279
And also early writings, page 282.
ne mu early writings page 282.
Early writings 282 and 279.
Early writings 279
The second reference
ewalala we nandibatutte
is the time of trouble.
ke kaseera akakazigizigi.
So, this is Jacob's time of trouble.
Kano kaseera kakubonaabona aka Yakobo.
We're here.
Yaawo
We could prove that. We could prove that,
tusobola okukiraga
but we're going to state it as a fact.
naye tugenda kukiteekawo.
And the chapter before is called The Third Message Closed.
Era essuula nga tonnatuuka kweno egamba nti obubaka bwa malayika owokusatu buggalwawo.
Ellen White was pointed down to the time
Ellen White yatwalibwa mu kaseera
when the third angel's message was closing.
obubaka bwa malayika owokusatu nga buggalwawo.
The power of God had rested upon his people.
Amaanyi ga Katonda gaali gali ku bantu be.
That's what? Latter rain.
Era ye enkuba ey'oluvannyuma.
They had finished their holy use.
Baali bamaze omulimu gwabwe gwonna.
They'd been prepared, sanctified for holy use.
Era wano baali bateekebwateekebwa okukola olw'omulimu.
They do their holy use.
Awo ne bakola omulimu gwabwe.
And they finish their holy use before the close of probation.
Era ne bamaliriza omulimu gwabwe ng'oluggi terunaggalwa.
Not at the close of probation.
Si ku luggi we luggalwa.
Just want to remind people of that.
Kye njagala okujjukiza abantu wano.
If you're allowed me to make a leap of faith,
Singa munzikiriza okugezaako okugyayo okukkiriza kwaffe.
close of probation for the priests,
Oluggi lwa bakabona bwe luggalwa.
November the 9th.
Novemba nga 9.
When would the work be finished?
Omulimu gwandiwedde ddi?
On November the 9th or before?
Novemba
Before.
nga 9 oba nga tetunnatuukawo.
When was the work finished?
Omulimu gwa gwadde.
Give me the month. August 2019 at the International Camp Meeting.
Omulimu gwaggwa mu August 2019.
If you take the time to look at Elder Tessie's presentations,
Bw'otwala okudde n'otunuulira presentation Elder Tess,
post August last year,
ng'ovudde August omwaka oguwedde,
she shows how how the midnight cry message begins and ends.
alaga engeri message y'oluyogaano mu ttumbi bw'etambula.
The phrase she uses is bookend.
Era kyategeeza engeri gy'etandika n'engeri gy'ekoma.
It's pointed to the time when the third angel's message was closing.
Nga malayika wookusatu wamaliriza omulimu gwe,
They had received the power
baafuna amaanyi,
and they had finished their work
era nga bamaze omulimu gwabwe,
and were, I'm going to say, waiting.
era nga balinda,
They were prepared for the trying hour before them.
era nga balinda ekigezo ekigenda okujja gye bali.
They'd received the latter rain,
Baafuna enkuba ey'oluvannyuma,
and the Living Testament had been revived.
era ne bafuna n'obujulizi bwa Kristo.
The great warning had been given,
Era okulabula kwali kuweebweddwa,
and everyone who would listen received the message.
era buli omu eyawuliriza nga yafuna obubaka.
So the trying hour before them
Kati ekigezeso ekyali kigenda okujja gye bali,
is this event here, Jacob's time of trouble.
we okujja ku Boss Time of Trouble,
And she says
era agamba
the third angel's message is closing its work.
nti malayika owookusatu aggalawo omulimu gwe.
So where does the third angel finish its work?
Kati malayika owookusatu amaliriza ddi omulimu gwe?
Not the second advent,
Si ku Second Advent,
at the close of probation.
wabula ku lujja okuggalwawo.
So it actually looks like this.
Era kifaanana bwe kiti.
This is the close.
Awo bwa malayika okusatu bwe
And the reason why people struggle with this
era ensonga lwaki abantu bakyawakana nnyo n'ensonga eno
is because they can't reconcile
kubanga tebasobola kukikkiriza
early writings 279
early writings 279
with early writings,
early writings
page 118.
olupapula 118
Because it says bind,
kubanga agamba okuŋŋaanya
and they associate binding in the closing of probation history.
kubanga okuŋŋaanya bagamba kuliwo okuva mu kiseera kya close of probation.
So the question I've been asked
kati ekibuuzo ekibadde kibuuziddwa
talks about sealing, selecting, binding,
kibuuza ku kuŋŋaanya kuteekako akabonero.
and isn't that connected to the reapers of Matthew 13?
ekyo tekikwatagana n'abakunguzi ab'amatayo 13
When Christ talks about the reapers there.
kristo wayogera ku bakunguzi.
Someone give us the verse. They both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, gather together the tares and then the wheat. Verse 30,
olunyiriri olwasatu
all we want to see is the reapers.
tetwagala okulabawo bwe bakunguzi.
It's the reapers that do this work.
abakunguzi bwe bakola omulimu guno.
And here it seems to infer that the work of the third angel is the same as the work as the reapers.
era wano agamba nti malayika owookusatu alina omulimu gwe gumu n'abakunguzi.
And I think the misunderstanding
era kyensuubira nti ekirategeerekeka
is happening because of understanding of what binding means.
yensonga lwaki tutategeera ki okuŋŋaanya kye kitegeeza.
When you bind,
bw'okuŋŋaanya
we read,
tusomye
if I can find it,
ngezeeko okunoonya wano
Testimonies to the Church,
bwe twasomye testimonies to the church
volume 8,
volume 8
page 41.
olupapula 41.
Let's just go back there.
tugezeeko ku diagram.
Two armies,
twalabye amagye ga mirundi ebiri.
standard after standard of God's army, was thrown into the dust.
tulaba bulungi nti ababadde agali amagye ga kristo nga gasuulibwa ku ttaka.
They leave God's army and join the enemy.
bava kuva ku magye ga kristo ne bagenda okugenda ku magye g'omulabi.
And then, tribe after tribe from the enemy's ranks joins us.
era ne tulaba nti buli tribe nga eva ku ludda lw'omulabe nga egenda ku ludda lwa kristo.
An angel gives all these people a standard.
kati olumala naawa abantu bano kye bateekeddwa okuyimirirako.
Not everyone's hands.
si mu buli omu mu ngalo ze.
It just says many hands.
n'agamba engalo nga nnyingi.
So in this model
kati bwe tuba tunuulira wano
of an army,
nga tutunuulira amagye,
who would have a standard?
ani yandibadde n'ekipimo?
Every soldier? No. We know armies don't work that way.
buli wamagye yandibadde n'ekipimo?
Who has a standard?
ani alina ekipimo?
A standard bearer. So we'll say that each of these groups have a standard.
Era buli omu kweno group alina ekipimo oba balina bendera.
Then it says,
n'agamba
come into line.
nga bayita okukuŋŋaanira wamu.
A mighty general cried out with a loud voice, come into line.
Waliwo akulira amagye yabayita n'abagamba bannaye mujje ffenna tukole omusittale gumu.
What does it mean to come into line?
kitegeeza ki bonna okubeera mu layini emu?
So, Here are the commandment keeping people,
wano we wali abakuuma amateeka ga katonda,
a mess,
abantu abangi abakuuma amateeka ga katonda,
and it says just join the mess.
n'abagamba kati temukola mubeegatteko.
Is that what it says? It says come into line.
Abagamba mujje mwegatte mu kisiinde kino.
What does that mean?
Kitegeeza ki?
It doesn't just mean join them.
Tekitegeeza nti mujje mubeegatteko.
I just said that, get into line. Tell me what that means. Order, organize. An army we just discussed, it organizes like this.
Tubadde twogera ku magye ne tugamba nti gabeera gali organized bwe gatyo.
Go check all the battles.
Kubanga bagenda lwana ntalo.
They have a left flank,
Balina
the left group.
Group endala esigaddeyo.
The right flank,
Balina n'endala egenda okulwana.
heavy cavalry, light cavalry, chariots.
Balina amagye, balina ebyokulwanyisa n'embalaasi.
They're all in their separate groups.
Naye tukimanyi bulungi nti bali mu bibinja bya njawulo.
That's what it means, get into line, get into order.
Kati kyategeeza nti ekyo kyategeeza mujje mubeere mu order amu nabo.
If you're here,
Bw'obeera awo
can you say, oh, I prefer to go in here because I prefer this boss?
ogamba nti kansale ngende ewooli kuba ono bossi si mulungi kimala.
No,
Nedda.
because that's disorder.
Kubanga ekyo kitegeeza butabeera wamu.
It looks like this,
Kifaanana bwe kiti
and you want to change it
ate gwe oyagala kikyusa
to look like this.
kibeere bwe kiti.
And this is not order.
Ate nga kino ekyokubiri si order.
What keeps you in this order?
Ekikuleetera okubeera mu bumu buli
What maintains that shape?
kiki ekikwata obumu obwo.
Sorry? Louder? The standard bearer. Someone said?
Akwata bendera.
The creed. The creed does that. The creed is the law or the rules,
Amateeka ge gakola ekyo.
symbolized by the standard, by the banner.
Era nga abakulembedde yakikola ekyo.
You can visualize it
Oyinza okugezaako kiraba mu ngeri eno
that there's a cord around you
nti waliwo ekibasibye
that you can't step out of.
nti tosobola kufuluma bweru.
So I would argue
N'ategezezaako oleeta endowooza egamba nti
that in this history,
bwe tuba mu kiseera ekyo
these people are doing what?
abantu bano bakola ki?
They're being bound off,
Babasiba.
and the person who's binding them off is that general
Era ng'omuntu abasiba
with a loud cry.
era nga abasiba n'eddoboozi eddene.
And you all agreed it was the loud cry of the third angel.
Era wandigambye nti ono ye malayika owookusatu.
So the loud cry of the third angel, this general, is organizing the people, which is binding them into groups.
Era tukimanyi bulungi nti malayika ono yakwata abantu n'abasiba.
How do I know that?
Ndowooza buli omu akimanyi.
Because I'm not guessing.
Siri mu kuteebereza.
If you go to page Early Writings,
Bw'ogenda mu Early Writings,
page 240,
olupapula 240,
the Advent Movement Illustrated.
agamba nti omugendo gw'Abadiventi gulagibwa.
The story starts in the period of darkness,
Olugero luno lutandika mu kiseera eky'ekizikiza
before the time of the end.
nga obudde obw'ekiseera ky'ekkomero tebunnatuuka.
What did we read here?
Ate wano twasomye eki?
Company.
Twasomye ekibinja
These are the companies.
era bino bye bibinja.
What keeps you in a company?
Kiki ekikumira abantu mu bibinja?
The standard, which is the creed.
Tumanyi bulungi ekikumira abantu mu bibinja ge mateeka.
You're either cavalry or infantry.
oba oli mukavalo oba infantry
you have a place.
olina woteekeddwa okubeera
You're either the left flank or the right flank.
either oli ku kono oba ku ddyo
240 paragraph 1.
bw'osoma 240 olunyiriri olusooka
I saw a number of companies that seemed to be bound together by cords.
nalaba ebibinja bingi era nga bisibiddwa
We'll stop there.
era tusooke tukomaawo
What are we seeing?
tulaba ki wano
That there are companies, it's the same word,
tulaba nti waliwo ebibinja ng'era bwe tulabye wano
and they're all bound together
era bonna basibiddwa
by cords.
emiguwa
If you drop down to 242 paragraph 1,
bw'ogenda ku 242 olunyiriri olusooka
can anybody remember where I did a study on this chapter and laid it out?
waliwo ejjukira wali twakolera ku ssuula eno
Where? Kenya. Good. 2018, Kenya. I'd also did it in Brazil earlier in the year, I think.
chapter eno twagikola mu kenya naye nagikolako ne brazil
But I don't think it was recorded there.
naye sijjukira oba bagirekodi
242 paragraph 1.
bw'osoma 240 olunyiriri olusooka
This, all I want to show here is we're in this reform line. We're not in this period here. We're not in the binding off here.
tenjagala okubalaga nti tuli mu kiseera kya kuŋŋaanyizibwa
I read the introductory passage. You're here in the time of darkness,
weesookedde okusoma nga tulaga tuli mu kiseera ky'ekizikiza
and you're bound in companies.
era mu birimu bibinja
And now, without going into details, we're somewhere in this history.
kati nga tunagenda nnyo wala era tuli awo mu byafaayo
You can guess where.
oyinza okugezaako teebereza wa
Come out from among them and touch not the unclean.
agamba baveemu abo era temukwata ku ekyo kitali kituukirivu
Where are you?
tuli wa
Right here.
tuli awo ku loud cry awo
In obedience to this voice, a large number broke the cords which bound them.
bwe batuuka mu kiseera ekyo abantu bangi baamenya emiguwa egyali gibasibye
They left the companies.
era ne bava mu bibinja ebyo
So here,
kati bwe tutuuka wano
in this history,
mu kiseera ekyo
she's giving a different perspective now,
ate alina ekintu ekirala ekyenjawulo kyaleese
which we're not studying.
kyetutasoma
But all I want us to see,
naye kyenjagala tulabe
that there's a binding off of companies in this history.
nti waliwo okusibibwa oba okuŋŋaanyizibwa kw'obubinja mu kiseera kyo
In this story,
mu lugero luno
it says they break the cords which bound them.
nti bamenya enjegereze zaali zibasibye
We'll drop down.
tukkirira wansi
The ministers and leading men were going around the companies and putting the cords back more tightly.
kaakati abaali babakulira baminisita ne bagenda emiko gye baali bakulire ne bagenda ne baddamu bongere okugisiba
And then coming down a bit more,
bweyongera n'okkirira wansi
there was another message to come out from among them.
ne wabaawo enjiri endala ebuulirwa nti mubaveemu abo
And it says individuals struggled for freedom and at last broke the cords that bound them.
agamba nti abooluganda baalwana okutuusa lwe bamenya enjegere ezaali zibasibye
So all I want us to see,
njagala omulabe
without going into the study any deeper,
nga tetugenze nnyo mu kusoma wala
when Ellen White talks about the sealing, selecting and binding in early writings, page 118,
Ellen White bw'aba ayogera mu kuteekako akabonero ne mu kulonda
she's not talking about this history.
tayogerera mu kiseera ekyo
She's actually talking about this history.
ayogera mu kiseera kino okuva tusandira okuva close of the
This one here.
okuva 214 okutuuka 211
In our line, it's 14 to 19.
mu kiseera kyaffe 214
And if you go back to the parable of Matthew 13,
boddayo ku lugero lwa matayo essula 13
you will see that those servants
ogenda kulaba nti abakozi bano
seal, select, and bind.
nti be bateekako akabonero be balonda era be bakuŋŋaanya.
The third angel, the servants, are not the reapers.
Nti malayika owookusatu n'abakozi si be bakunguzi.
And of course, when you go to Revelation 14,
Neyongerayo mu Kubikulirwa 14,
where does the third angel finish its work?
malayika owookusatu amaliza ddi omulimu.
Revelation 14. Which verse? Verse 12.
Bw'otunuulira Kubikulirwa essula 14 olunyiriro 12.
Verse 13.
Olunyiriro 13,
I heard another voice from heaven,
ne mpulira eddoboozi eddala eddene nga liva waggulu
which makes a statement,
era erikola eddoboozi
and then you see the work of harvest.
nga n'olyoka olaba omulimu gw'okukungula.
The work of harvest comes after the work of the third angel.
Omulimu gw'okukungula gujja nga malayika owookusatu amaze okukola.
So that was a question that I received,
Ekyo ekibuuzo kye nafunye
and I think it may have been a question that a number of people had.
era kye mbadde mmanyi kibuuzo abantu bangi kye babadde nakyo.
So the movement, people in the movement,
Abantu abali mu mugendo
have gone into early writings
bagenze mu early writings
and misplaced the work of the third angel.
ne batateeka malayika waakusatu wateekeddwa okubeera.
And if the close of the third angel is at close of probation,
Kati omulimu gwa malayika owookusatu oguba guggalawo ku close of probation,
that cannot be its empowerment.
ate awo tewasobola kubeera nga waweebwa amaanyi.
In each of these messages,
Mu bubaka buno bwonna
the message arrives,
message ejja
is empowered,
neweebwa amaanyi
and ends.
ate olumala neggalawo omulimu.
Arrives, empowers, and ends.
Ejja neweebwa amaanyi neggalwawo.
Therefore, close of probation cannot be the empowerment of the third angel.
Ekitegeeza olujja okuggalawo tegusobola kubeera nga g'emaanyi ga malayika owookusatu.
That's the close.
Omulimu guggalwa,
Sunday law becomes its empowerment.
Sunday law yeefuuka weweebwa amaanyi.
And as we learnt here,
Era nga bwe tuyiga wano
you find that the third angel
twesanga bulungi nti malayika owookusatu
actually begins its work back here,
atandika omulimu gwe okuva ku layini
in this line here,
ku layini eyo wansi
at the same point that the second angel's message arrives.
ku ngeri y'emu ne malayika owokubiri wajjira.
The people might try to resist and fight that,
Abantu bayinza okugaana n'ogezaako kirwanyisa,
but I think you can prove that from the spirit of prophecy.
naye
In fact, you can. I'm not even saying you, I think.
kyemmanyi osobola okuwa obujulizi okuva mu mwoyo w'obunnabbi.
Of course,
Kyemmanyi
it's not 9/11.
si 2
What is it? It's 1844. The arrival of the third angel,
kimanyi bulungi nti wano 1849
and its empowerment would be here.
era aweebwa amaanyi mu kiseera ekyo.
This is the story that Ellen White gives us. This is a story that we can see in great controversy.
Buli olugero Ellen White lwatuwa era lwe lugero olutwa lunene lwe lutuwa.
Let's pray.
Tusabe.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and mercy. Please guide and protect us as we meditate upon the work of the third angel. Father, above all things, may we hear that angel's voice as she speaks to us. May we listen and not only have a profession of faith, but may we obey her word and be sanctified by the truth. Of course, we realize that as priests, this is all too late. Too little, too late. We know that that is 2 dispensations in the past. But here we find ourselves as the 144,000, still with an opportunity of accepting the work of the third angel and to be sanctified for it, to be prepared for holy use. May each of us enter into that work and be consecrated to it. We pray in Jesus' name.